What's going on, everybody? By the time y'all see this video, it will be my birthday. I was born September 6th, and I think this is a great opportunity to give my origin story. Before I even do that, I want to first say shout out to my mother, and I hope this video does not offend her in any way, shape, or form. I use this kind of information to give my mother a lot of praise and a lot of credit. And I think that she deserves it. So I hope I don't offend her by this video. I'm also give my dad a lot of praise, and my dad's gonna be included, obviously, and so is my sisters will be. And I'm going to mention a lot of pillars and key people in my life because this is my origin story, and I want to give you guys an in-depth idea and understanding of where I'm from, what I've seen growing up, what I experienced, to kind of give you guys an idea of what shaped me and why am I the way I am, why am I, why does my music reflect some of those things or talk about some of the things I talk about. So I think this is a great opportunity to do it. So again, by the time you guys see this video, it will be my birthday. It is currently September 5th, and this video will drop September 6th, 12 a.m. You guys will be getting this video September 6th, 12 a.m. So where do I start? I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, right? And some of y'all are like, well, then you're from Baltimore. I don't know anything about Baltimore, bro. I have no memories of Baltimore. If I have any memories of Baltimore, they're very faint. I can't recall them. I can't come out here and scream out Baltimore. That's why you hear me screaming out North Philly. We moved to Philly when I was approximately 2 to 3 years old. So I don't have any recollection of Baltimore. And honestly, in my very early childhood, the woman who is my mother, my birth mother, I had really no recollection of her either. There was, however, a faint memory I had in my head of a hand that looked like mine. So this, like a hand that looks like this, pushing a brown-skinned woman's face into drywall. I didn't understand that memory. I didn't know where it came from. I never pieced it together until a little bit later. And that hand was my dad's, and that face that I remember was my mom's. That had to happen right around the age of 3 years old. So I don't really remember, that had to happen then. But as a kid, I don't remember. I didn't know that was my mom. I didn't know anything that was going on. You're a kid. You're just piecing things together. You're just seeing events. The woman who I thought was my mom was my stepmom, my dad's girlfriend who came along with 4 kids. Shout out to my stepmom. She was a good person. I'm not here to shit on her or nothing like that. But that's the woman who I thought she was my actual mom. However, the actual story is that my mom, probably when I was 3 or 4, my mom went to jail. My actual mom went to jail, which is why I didn't, and my dad bounced around from shelters. So he was in 2 shelters that he met this woman named Michelle. Michelle had a son who has the same nickname that my little brother has. That's how they found each other. Because I believe one day Michelle was calling out my brother's nickname, which is Man Man. She was calling that out, and he showed up. She was talking to her son. And then my dad and her met, and she was getting high at the time. Yeah, it's going to be a lot about drugs in this story. She was getting high at the time, and my dad was getting high at the time. So, when 2 people getting high at the same time, they probably going to start getting high together. It's just, for those of y'all who don't know about crack and so them drugs, yeah, that's how it gets down. So, we're in a shelter. They meet. They end up leaving the shelter and going to her mom's house, which was on Master Street. We're in like this 3-story house, wood floors. It's 6 kids to the house. Me, my younger brother, and her 4. Yep, her 4. My little cousin my step cousin who I call my cousin, he might have been in there. He was in there. His mom was there. So we all, and it's at least, I'm going to say it was like anywhere. I mean, my dad, my stepmom, her mom, her sister. That's 4 adults. There's her 4 kids. That's 4. Me and my brother, that's 2. So that makes 6. So there was 10 people in this house. This house had wood floors. Heat wasn't on. I mean, we was thugging it. We was really thugging it. The irony is that this house was right around the corner from the house I eventually ended up growing up in. But at some point, one point or another, um, my dad ends up getting the little apartment on Girard on College Ave, and he moves us into there. So now it's 6 kids or 5 kids. I believe her oldest daughter wasn't living with us. 5 kids to a 2-bedroom apartment, 2 adults. And this is when I started seeing a lot of the drug use. I would find cut up straws in the house, a lot of alcohol everywhere. You know, my dad and my stepmom was doing their thing. And I would see it, but it was kind of normal. You know, everyone's smoking cigarettes, not the kids, the adults. All the adults are smoking cigarettes. They all drinking Coke 45s and Old English and all that other stuff. And that was just the norm. It was so much of a norm. I was like, when I get older, I can't wait to smoke a cigarette, because I thought that was just what you did, just the bare minimum. Now, I did notice something about my dad and his friends. A lot of my dad's friends was missing teeth. They was fat. They had big old stomachs. They all smelled like beer half the time. They were used to go to my dad's room and they would walk out. They would walk in my dad's room and walk out eyes low as hell. But it wasn't smoking weed. It was something totally different, whatever they was doing in that room. Crack, right? Probably was crack. But they would go in there and get high, come back out. And so we're saying this as kids. This is what it is. It's 6 kids. It's 5 kids to a 1-bedroom, you know, head to feet in the bed. Most nights we would have, we was broke as hell. So most nights my dad would make like cabbage or some shit like that. And I love cabbage. You know, I don't know why, but I love cabbage. I kind of like it today. And my stepmom couldn't cook worth shit. So all her white rice looked like mashed potatoes. So, and then we used to eat the salmon out of a can. If you ain't from the slums like I am, you know nothing about what I'm talking about. It was salmon in a can. And she loved to make turkey necks. I don't understand this, but she used to make turkey necks. It's all bone, no meat. So, I remember being a little boy trying to pick through the bone to get to the meat. It was the most disgusting shit ever. But that's what it was. It was so bad. She was so bad at cooking. Me and my brother both had like a worm. We both had like, I don't know, I think it was a tapeworm. We both had worms. I remember this because, you know, if you guys, I won't be too graphic for y'all, but if y'all know how you get rid of them, I remember my dad having to do that. I thought I swallowed some tape or some shit. I didn't know. So this is like the early childhood. This is it. And I won't say I was a bad kid, but I got in trouble a lot. I used to wet the bed a lot. Children who tend to wet the bed, there tends to be something going on there. Since we having the full-on dialogue, I got abused. I got sexually abused. Even that early, I remember. Even that early. And I don't remember who did that, how that happened, when it happened, but I do remember the event. And I would wet the bed all the time. I would wet the bed all the time. Just to kind of get off that main story real quick, I actually used to sleepwalk a lot too. And I would sleepwalk and wake up butt-ass naked in random places in the house. The third time I did that, my dad was actually concerned. The first few times he thought I was just joking around. But when he found me butt-ass naked underneath the table, he was like, all right, something ain't right with my son. I might have to go get looked at or whatever. But he never pursued it further. So back to the main storyline. So then my mom actually shows up. She comes. I remember the way my mom was dressed. I remember her hair. I remember her beautiful brown skin. She had high heels on. My mom loved some heels. She, you know, beautiful woman. My mom, she looks like, to me, my mom was like a brown skinned China doll, right? That's my mom. I love her. If I could like describe her equivalent, I would say my mother's equivalent is like, if she was like a action hero, I would say it's like Sarah Connor. Like if you could I would say Sarah Connor from Terminator 2. If you could make Sarah Connor like more tech savvy, that would be my mom, straight up and down. So anyway, back to the story. One day, me and my brother are like in the house, and my mom shows up. Brown skinned woman, curly hair, said, "Hey, I'm your mom." And I'm like, "You're my mom, but who's the bald head woman in the room?" And my dad, you know, said, "Don't call her bald headed." I'm like, "Well, she ain't got no hair." So I was a little asshole. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I was a little asshole, especially when I started realizing stuff ain't right. I was calling out stuff left and right. That's why I kept a belt on my ass. It was just belt on my ass, pound in my face. It was what it was. So she's like, I'm your mom. And I'm like, this is my mom. Dad, who's this woman? It says your mom. So I'm like, okay. And she was very happy to see us. You know, I didn't know no better. And she started picking us up on the weekend. And this is when my life started making a big change. Because then I started to see something different. I started to realize that the way we was living wasn't the way you were supposed to be living. But before I get there, another key fact is my stepmother physically disciplined me, right? I got physically disciplined for things I couldn't even have done. So that started to build up resentments. It's one thing when you get disciplined or in trouble for things you know you did. At some point you accept it. But I'm a little kid. I'm maybe like 4 or 5 years old at this point, and there's no explanation for the shit I'm seeing or what I'm getting disciplined for. So I was starting to build up resentments. It's important why I'm telling you this. My dad did not physically discipline her kids at all. He never did. Not even her son. And I believe my little brother, she physically disciplined him a little bit too. But my little brother didn't get disciplined the way I did. It just didn't happen. And he can admit that now. It just didn't happen. So we meet our mom and we start going to her house on weekends. My mother is in early recovery. I'm sorry I had to say it, Mom, but it's very important for the story. My mother was in early recovery at the time. So she would take us to meetings. So we in NA meetings running around. Like, some of the places had boxing gyms. Some of the places had, whatever. And she would take us to the meetings. So me and my little brother, we so small, we pick up the boxing gloves and throw them at each other. Because we couldn't put them on. It was too big. And my mom's in the meetings. And I remember watching the meetings and watching people confess and talk about their life and talk about the things that bothered them. I remember watching this. And I would be in awe. But I didn't know that you don't know what you're watching. You're just there. So, and then I'm going to go back home. My mom get us on Friday. She lived in Germantown, in these apartment complexes. I can actually point out the apartments if I ever go. When I go back to Philly, I'll get a video of it. And then we would come back home on Sunday mornings. Now, here's the thing. My mother had cable. She had a bunch of VHS tapes. And so we thought our mom was rich. We'd go there and eat cheeseburger and french fries because my mom couldn't cook worth shit. I mean, not at all. No, she could not cook at all at that time. You can cook now though, mama. Shout out to you. But you couldn't cook back then. You was a non-cooking ass mom. That just was what it was. And so we would, cheeseburger and french fries. That beats cabbage and white rice that look like mashed potatoes every day of the week. And so she would also take us to like the fellowship after the NA meeting. So they would go to like diners and my mom would take us with her. And my mom ain't had no real money back then. My mom was broke as hell, right? But she found out a way to make sure we got a little bit to eat, get the little kids' meals on the table. Mind you, I'm 5'4" as a grown ass man. I'm a short man. Very athletic, very powerful, very explosive, but I'm a short man. So as a kid, if I'm 4 and 5, I'm like damn near an infant. Right? So a little kids meal is fine. So she takes us to those things and I would see that side of life, and I go back to my dad's house on Sunday and you could smell the burning, you could smell the crack smoke in the air, because when the stuff they not the crack itself, but the pipes, the pipe that they were used to smoke it out of and all that, you could smell all of that. So what I didn't realize until I was much older, until I was like much older. Like this, I'm well into grad school by the point I realized this. I was raised in active recovery and active addiction. Right? 2 hands. Active recovery, active addiction. Pretty much meaning that I knew what it looked like when people were actively using, and I knew what it looked like when people were fighting for their life and trying to be clean. And I didn't know that. So I was given a choice very early. Granted, I'm a little kid. I live with the person actively using. So as a little kid, I tried whatever I could see. So I tried smoking cigarettes as a little boy. I was sneaking them out my dad's pack. I never tried beer because it smelled disgusting. Like there was nothing about it that smelled good. And if you're around cigarette smoke enough, you get used to the smell of it. So I tried cigarettes. I tried weed when I was a little kid. Like a couple of my older friends, they would smoke. And it immediately started to shape my mind, because as I'm watching my dad's friends, and I'm now starting to see a different side of life. I'm watching Boy Meets World. I'm watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm seeing all these two-parent households. Why don't I have a two-parent household? Why is it that their streets don't have cracks in it, right? Why is it that their school is this way? I'm starting to realize all these things early and have these dialogues internally early. And it's starting to shape the young man I was starting to become. The little boy I was, the teenager, well, not teenager, but the young man I was starting to become. And I can, and I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on my parents at all, because I'm not. My mom and my dad are the shit. But there is something very important in all of this. My mom and dad questioned my athletic ability a lot. They never questioned my intellect. That was evident because they kept a book in my hands. Fun fact, in the 6th grade, I had a 12th grade reading level. I tested at the 12th grade reading level on the PSSA test, I believe. But that's because they kept books in my hand. It was books in my face. My dad had me in the chess program early, despite all the chaos going on in the house, right? And there was a lot of it. Also, I watched my dad and my stepmom fight a lot. I watched them actually fist fight. My dad won all those fist fights. We're not bragging, but that's just what it was, and we saw it. And what I started to recognize in the household, I started to recognize hypocrisy in the household. And I started to realize that no one was protecting me. At least it felt that way. So when my stepmom would go to physically discipline me, I started to defend myself. Straight up and down. Started to defend myself. I wasn't having it. You're not my mom. I know you're not my mom. And you're trying to do a little bit extra. I'm not having it. And then even with my dad, I couldn't really defend myself against my dad. But when I started getting physically disciplined for things that I couldn't have done, things that my dad thought I did because he was high off crack or he was drunk, and no one would listen, my dad would go to discipline me and I would defend myself. I wasn't going for it either. I would at least push him off or cover up. But I wasn't just taking no ass whooping. You just was not going to just beat on me and just be like, yeah, you take that. And life was really interesting very early. I seen a lot of things I had no business seeing. One day, when my dad was having one of his crack parties, middle of the week, like on a Wednesday or something, my uncle, who was my dad's girlfriend's uncle, my stepmom's brother, my stepmom, I walked into his room. I'm probably 5 at this time. Now, mind you, all these events I'm telling you about, I'm like 4 or 5 years old. I'm not even 8, 9 yet. So I'm like, actually, no, let me take that back. This particular event I'm about to tell you about, I was 7. I was 7 years old. I walked into my dad's room and my uncle was having sex with my substitute teacher. I walked in, I paused, I said, whoa, and walked back out. That next day at school, I remember she walked right past me, nose in the air. I never forget what she looked like. She was fair skinned with freckles and that curly hairstyle from like the 80s. Mind you, this is the late 90s, but she had that curly hairstyle from like the 80s. And but these are a lot of events I saw very early. And then as I progressively got a little bit older, now we're creeping into 8, 9, 10. My dad was getting sick almost every month from alcohol, like something with kidney this, something with that. My dad did a lot of drugs. He was a Vietnam Marine. My dad did a lot of drugs. And he would get sick almost every month. Around this time, as I'm getting a little bit older, there was a really bad event that happened in our apartment complex. So my Aunt Candy, my dad's big sister, she comes back around to the picture. Apparently, they lived together. My aunt, my dad, and my mom, my dad and my mom lived with my aunt at one point. I don't remember this lifestyle. I don't remember this part of my life at all. It didn't last long. My aunt had to kick them out. So my aunt will pop back up. So now I got an auntie in the picture who loves us to death. My auntie was like the closest thing I had to a grandmother. Because all my grandparents died before I was born. Or at least my dad's dad and mom, their parents died. Found out later that my dad's dad was alive, but they didn't want us to meet him. My mom's great grandma was alive, but the initial grandparents were all gone. At least I was told that. And one of the most horrific things I remember, I was probably, like I said, I was like maybe 9 or 10. A fire breaks out. A fire breaks out in the apartment complex, and the lady whose apartment the fire started and died, and she had a young daughter about the same age as me and my brother. So she died. We were terrified. We grabbed the cats, we ran outside. And I'm bringing up that event because that event shaped us in a lot of ways, man. But there was another event that wasn't nearly as horrific in terms of somebody dying. No one died in this other event, but something was stolen from us. So my dad had a best friend. We called him Pops. So everyone thought he was our grandpop. That was just his nickname. Him and my dad were just close friends. Both of them were veterans. And Pops had some grandchildren who were about me and my little brother's age. They were all older than we were. They weren't our age. They were older. We were close with one of them, real close. And this is the kid that actually got me and my brother to try weed, try smoking and shit like that. Now, at this point, I'm about 9. So now we're at about 9 years old. And he would come down, play the video game with us and all that. So one day, we come home from the VA hospital. Never forget this day. This day scared the shit out of me. We come home from the VA hospital, and our cat is outside. We had a cat named Scott. Scott was a calico. We didn't know she was a girl. We didn't know no better. We get home, the cat is outside because the window was open. We go through the house and we find out that a lot of our shit had been stolen. Video games were stolen. My dad's guns were stolen. He had multiple guns. They were all stolen. My dad actually bought a camcorder from his best friend's son. So the camcorder that he bought from that family was stolen by that family. And so cops come, fingerprints are taken, they take it back and all that. And I remember sitting in there as a little boy and being terrified. Because the home that was safe to us is no longer safe. Someone violated that. And we didn't feel safe. I was scared. I know my little brother was scared, but we felt like we had no clothes. We felt violated. And that was a hard pill to swallow. Also, another thing about growing up where I grew up, they call me white boy a lot. I don't look like nobody. You guys can obviously see the hair, right? This is my real hair color. I am an actual ginger or blinger, black ginger, whatever you want to call me. And I do have a mixed background, quote unquote. But my mother's black and my dad has black in him. A lot of black in him. So if you're going off of like, don't matter. I believe I'm a black man. So I recognize my mixed background and know my red hair is not a reflection of a mixed background. That has nothing to do with it. My mother's grandmother is black and she had red hair as well. No mixed nothing. My dad just so happened to come from a mixed background. That's it. That's all that matters. So anyway, moving on forward. So there was a lot of horrific memories, a lot of fun memories growing up where I'm from. And I just know that as I got older and started to understand it, it shaped who I was. Growing up in a household, growing up with active addiction and active recovery being right there in front of my face, I kind of always knew what it was, just not by name. And then as I got older and I got around clients and I got into graduate school, yeah, I was seeing it. And music had always been a part of it. Music and writing have always been a part of my life. And my dad encouraged both. Where my dad didn't necessarily encourage sports and my mom didn't, but I was always around music. And my dad heard me rapping one day and was like, yo, you can actually do that. And he actually encouraged it. So when you guys hear me make references to, like in one song I said something about, I can't remember the lines, so many songs by this point. I said something about people made their purchase, then they shut the door and got active. What I was referring to was my dad and my stepmom. They would go out, buy their shit, and then when that door shut in their room, you knew what was going on. They was either shooting up, smoking up, something. And so I was around that. And I'm gonna be transparent with y'all. I got bullied very young. Like, I didn't get bullied for long periods of time because you wasn't gonna just pick on me. I was gonna punch you in your shit. It wasn't gonna last that long. You might have got me on Monday, Tuesday. You might have got me on Wednesday. But by Thursday or Friday, I'm punching you in your shit. So I'm not, hey, we ain't just picking on the ginger. It ain't working like that. I wasn't going out like that. And by that point in time, I started protecting myself a little bit when my dad would try to beat on me or whatever. So if I'm gonna hold my own against him and make sure he don't be hitting on me and all that, I damn sure ain't gonna let y'all do it. It just wasn't happening like that. The logic ain't logicking. But I remember growing up in that environment, gunshots. There were gunshots when we was in the schoolyard before. Like literal shootouts, we in the schoolyard. 12, 13 years old. And shout out to both my parents. They did a hell of a job. They did the best they could with the knowledge that they had. I'm sure if they had the knowledge they had today, they would have played those cards very different. Really different. I guarantee they would have. But they did the best with the knowledge that they had. And I get really upset when I see people get up here on these social media platforms and shit on their parents. There's no handbook to being a parent. They did the best they could. My dad was a Vietnam Marine. I never seen heads blow up. I didn't blow up huts. I didn't do the things he did. So I can't expect him to think the way I think. And my dad's whole goal for me was for me to be superior to him, to be better than what he was. So I was given opportunities that he didn't necessarily have. And I know my mother was a bit embarrassed. She told me she was embarrassed taking us to NA meetings. She didn't like doing it. But she pretty much saved my life with this stuff. Because of all her children, I might be the biggest addict out of all of them. I just don't touch no drugs or alcohol. Because if I did, I wouldn't be alive. I promise you. My personality is way too addictive. I can't even play like that. My personality is way too addictive, man. I'll be out here selling my carrot for whatever I can find, right? So yeah, my music will always consist of stories about, stories about the hood, stories about what I went through, stories about what I seen, what I felt. And my dad was also tougher on me. So much so that I was only getting recognized when my dad wanted me to clean up or when I won something. So I tried my best to win everything to get my dad's approval. Even as I got older and I was on Facebook one day and everyone was looking me up on Facebook, but they kept finding my brother because we have the same name. So I just put Jack on the front because my mother would call my dad Jack. Jack ended up becoming my nickname. Right? A lot of people call me Jack, which is how I got the name Jack Jackson Jr. My actual name is Baron Jackson Jr. I want to say thank you to my mom for, she may not have agreed with football. She may not have agreed with sports in general. But my mom has said this to me several times. I may not agree with football, but I love the discipline that it taught you. Because you go get it. You don't even care. And the way you play the game, she came out and saw me and said, oh my God, my son's really good. She never saw me play. The first game she saw me the first game my mom saw me playing football was my last game playing college football. And I think I had like 6 catches for like 70-something yards. And she had never seen me play before. And she said, oh my God, my son can actually play this game. So shout out to my mom. My mom is an amazing woman who has done everything in her power to give me everything I need. And shout out to my dad, who taught me to be a warrior. Who told me you don't take no shit, man. You don't take no shit. You're going to make mistakes. Don't cry about the mistakes. Don't sleep on the mistakes. Oh my God, woe is me. Nah, that's cool. Now get your punk ass up, dust your knees off, and get back out there. Some of the most important lessons my mom taught me was to speak up for yourself, believe in yourself, don't make excuses for yourself. And my dad, don't take no shit from nobody. You got everything you need to be great at whatever you want to be great at. My dad apologized for the stuff he put me through too, right? And he said, you got everything you need to be great. Don't let nobody tell you can't be great. You can dominate whatever you want to do. And no truer words were ever spoken. He used to tell me, you don't fight your brother, you protect your brother. It took me a while to understand that one. And before he died, he wanted me to make sure I protect my big sister, who's his youngest daughter, my niece, my brother. And that's a lot of pressure to put on me. It's a lot of pressure to put on me. But him and my mother built a young man that he a hard dude to kill. He's a hard dude to stop. It's damn near impossible. And because of the skills they gave me, I'm going to be just fine. Happy birthday to me. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you.